Yeah, one of the things that colonization does to us is that we lose the ability to take care of our own spiritual practice, our own needs. And to illustrate this story, I'll tell the story of Carl Jung, the Swiss psychiatrist, when he went to Africa. And he asked one of the spiritual leaders in one of the villages if he dreamed. And the spiritual leader looked at him and he says, no, we don't have to do that anymore. The English dream for us. And it's a real profound statement as to how this colonization process works, to where even the dreams go away because we don't believe it anymore. We're so brainwashed to thinking that this stuff is weird, that it's not right, that we even forget how to do that. And it's a real critical part of our life, the dream. We're here at in the very center, I guess, of Canyon de Chelly, doing this talk with a lot of my young relatives, and talking about some of the things that happen here and how they have affected a lot of generations of Indian people all over the hemisphere. Because what happens in places like this affects not just Indian people, but human beings all over the planet. And we're here in the heart of the canyon, where a lot of the wounding happened to our relatives, bringing back some of that balance with some of the young people, because the young people are sacred, you know, they're innocent, and so they bring their sacred beings here, and in that way they're blessing all of us. And I wanted to say a little bit about my early work and working with Indian people and some of the problems that afflict the community. I started asking some of the elders what was going on, and one of the things that they would come up with is something they would call the soul wound. See, most of the time people say, well, it's alcohol's a problem, marijuana's a problem, or suicide's a problem, and these old people say, no, that's not the problem. And I was like, what? That's not the problem? And I said, well, what is it? And they say, it's the soul wound. And so I really didn't know what that was all about, because I was being trained as a Western psychologist, and I was being modern like you guys. And I thought, well, that's pretty strange to be talking about soul wounding. And I talked to some other old people and some medicine people, and they described that to me, what we talked about a while ago, that when somebody gets injured in their heart and their spirit, and they get real sad, if they don't get a chance to take care of that through some kind of a treatment, some kind of a therapy, that this is passed on to their children and to their grandchildren and great-grandchildren. And so what I've been finding over the years, working with Indian people from a lot of different tribes, is that a lot of the problems that we face here in the year 2000 are a direct result of that, of the soul wounding that happened. And the only way to really deal with it is to be honest with it, because I could just keep my mouth shut and say, well, you just have a depression, you have a neurosis, you're just an alcoholic. But all that would do is blame the person more. And almost every time that I've told people about this, they feel a great relief, because they start realizing that they're not a defective Indian, they're not a defective person. And that is the reason that we're even here talking about. One of the major issues that I see as far as being a problem for Native people is the whole idea of a colonization. And what that means is that when you're colonized, that means that your identity is taken away from you. And that happened to Indian people, where language and religion all kinds of customs, ways of growing food, ways of eating. Those were taken away by the colonization process, and they were replaced by other things that we use today. And because of that, there's a lot of sicknesses that afflict Indian people. And I know one of the relatives is doing some work in the diabetes area, and there was no diabetes, as far as we know, even 200 years ago in this area. You know, there was, and 500 years ago, there was no diabetes. So how come all of a sudden, you know, so many Indian people have diabetes? It can't be that they're defective. A lot of people try to say, well, it's genetic. You know, Indians have this genetic makeup that makes them alcoholic and it makes them diabetic. Well, I don't buy that. See, that's, again, blaming the creation of the Indian person themselves. And instead, I see it as a reaction to a lot of things that were done. And all of those things I call colonization of the native life world. And that's what creates a lot of the sicknesses that the native people have. And not just the diabetes, but the hypertension, depression, the suicide, the alcohol, substance abuse. All of those things are as a direct result of this process. And I think that it's really important that you know that, so that way your kids can know that. And that way I don't have to keep coming back here and talking about it, because it's a long ways down here. And so